allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. Carmen, please note all trustees in attendance. That's some officials. We'll go to minutes. I'll look for a motion and a second to approve the February 3rd, 2025 village board meeting minutes and to file the September 4th, 2024 CDA, Community Development Authority, the January 13th, 2025 Board of Public Works, the January 20th, 2025 Finance and Personnel Committee minutes as presented.
I'll make the motion.
Second. Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any changes, additions, questions? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That motion carries. All right, persons wishing to be heard, let's see a raise of hands here. Sir, let's start with you. Please come up to the dais. You, sir, yeah, up to the dais. Name and address, please.
Hey, Kurt Petrie, 30614 Durand Avenue, Burlington, Wisconsin. Here to speak for the Grove parking. My grandfather Ben and Teddy started up the company in the 30s. I worked there, my uncle worked there, and my nephew's working there, so we're fourth generation. So we're pretty excited about that. He can't be here, it's somewhere important at Twin. Yeah. We think we've been good community members, you know, when they started up in the garage in West Bend. And when they were looking for a community to be in, they came to Grafton, they looked all over the place, they just liked the community and that's why they're here. But what we're looking for as a favor is, we've always parked on a diagonal in front of the shop there. We've had no incidents with safety. It was like an ordinance in the 70s to do it. I don't want to undo something that a previous board do because we were accustomed to that. We don't want to mess up the neighbors because they're elderly. Trust me, I can't turn around and back up as well as they used to. And I'm back now, their driveways can be in there, so it works with all our employees. Otherwise, we have both sides of the street. I understand there's some cost things, but the street's 36 and up pretty much, so it's not going to cost for that extra 2 or 3 feet of pavement much money. We've never had an accident. I noticed in your engineer's report, they said it's unsafe to have that. If she wants to turn a little bit to cars, whatever, but that's important parking. I mean, we don't expect that you owe us anything, but we've been good community members for a long time. Anything the shop needs over there, at the village garage, give it the land for the water tower in lieu of taxes, the library stuff, the airport with the soccer club. We're all in the community. Maybe we just need this favor to keep our parking. It's nothing different, nothing changing. I don't know what's going on with the rest of that street with more parking, but just keep our time. Questions?
And we can't address back and forth with us, but we certainly appreciate you speaking. Thank you very much. Next individual, wishing to speak. Young lady, come on up.
My name is Karen Gross. I live at 1751 10th Avenue. I'm here to talk about the Grove parking or the 10th Avenue reconstruction. First off, I'd like to express my thanks to Amber and the entire village DPW crew. I sent a message to her last week because I wanted her to know how much appreciated I am of the great job DPW does here in Grafton. We wake up to plowed, salted, and safer streets every morning versus waiting for 48 hours to sleep plowing our own. On November 27th, we received a letter with a request for residents' input on narrowing 10th and 11th Avenue. I responded with a hearty no, and as I understand, all of my neighbors did as well. The letter talks about 32-foot width streets being narrowed to 28 feet. This is misleading, as I understand 10th Avenue now measures 36 on average. We bought our home here on 10th Avenue in Grafton because we fell in love with the neighborhood. Wide streets and mature trees on our property. This is where we lived for 32 years with no way for a fire truck or emergency vehicles to access the homes at the end of our block because of narrowed streets and vehicles parked on both sides of the street. I do not want the width of 10th or 11th Avenue to be changed. I want it to remain to be 30, just how it is, 36 feet. I'm not against angle parking for Grove employees, visitors, and the public, as long as it does not require 10th Avenue to be narrower than it currently is. We have this. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Next. Paul? Still gonna have to say your name, Paul.
Alright, Paul Malloy, 1216 Iris Lane, but I own a duplex on 10th Avenue, 1703 10th Avenue.
Paul, can you speak into the microphone? I'm
sorry.
over attending.
Sure. So I've had the house on 10th Avenue for 30 years. And actually the 10th Avenue section, 11th Avenue is really beat to head. 10th Avenue was redone, what I remember is about 10 years ago, so it's probably like 15. But it's nice, it's smooth. I mean, are they redoing sewer? I don't know if they're redoing sewers or gutters underneath, but if they're not redoing the sewers and gutters underneath, if you look at 10th Avenue, I even have a video that I shot that I could email you guys. 10th Avenue is actually still in really good condition. On top of that, it's a busy street. We've got Grove at one end, that they park there. If you take away the angle, they'll fill up both sides. We have the law office now that moved in on the corner, so that kind of fills up falls. So more of the teachers and the pick up and drop off time, there's parents parked along, there were kids running around, jumping in and out of cars. It's really a very busy road 2 times a day. And with the businesses there, it stays very busy too. So I just wanted to make a plea again, you know, Grove is great neighbors. We'd like to see them maintain that parking, because if they do, it will free up the rest of the street. And again, just a unique road that I think it needs some, you know, unique considerations, so definitely would like to see it maintained the way that it has now.
Thank you, Paul. Next. Mr. Harbeck?
Good afternoon. I'm Bill Harbeck, 907 17th Avenue in Grafton. I have just a couple things I want to say. One is the ordinance itself, and you read the reports and it makes it sound like we're doing this because the ordinance requires us to do this. And I think any good lawyer will tell you that's not true. If you look at the wording of the ordinance, when this was created in 2018, it applies, its applicability section says this applies to proposed subdivisions. It's not road reconstruction. It's not repaving. It's not utility work. Yet 1803 is all proposed land divisions. That's the applicability. I'm not saying it's not a good guideline to use, but it's not required that you do it. So just look at the statute and you'll see that that's what it is. The main thing I want to talk about is a process. And this is making sure that the neighbor input and feedback is heard and accounted for. Doesn't always win the day, but it ought to be heard and accounted for. And I understand here, I think Ms. Thomas did a great first job in advising the people on the street the road was going to be narrow. It was, the wrong information was in there. She said it was 32 feet, then at 28. It's not 32 feet anywhere. It's mostly 36, 34 in some spots. But I think that's a good first step. People provided feedback. A lot of people provided feedback, 7 people. There's not many houses on that street. I think there's a total of 7. Some were from off just around the neighborhood. But they provided feedback. Every single one of them said, we're very concerned about narrowing the roads, very concerned. 5 said strong no. 1 was, I didn't give me a yes or no, so I'm really not sure. 1 was, I guess I'll, whatever you need to do, but we still have concerns about the narrowing of the road. What happened, that feedback was it just went into a file, never got presented to the Board of Public Works. It didn't go anywhere, and the plans were made in spite of what the feedback was. I think as a matter of policy, the process should be, can I have a little more time, please? The process should, if we get substantial feedback, bring it to the Board of Public Works so the citizens can come and talk about it. And express their concerns, and there can be a back and forth, and maybe you make the same decision, but it lets them feel like they've been heard. And maybe the Board of Public Works will say, yes, you ought to listen to that. We ought to make an exception. And that's the third thing here is the proposal itself isn't to widen the streets to 36 feet. It's to keep the footprint. It's to keep it exactly the same as it is. It's not to widen it. And this is a street that makes sense deviate from what we call the guideline to allow it to retain its footprint, given the nature of the school lot nearby, the parking on both sides. You see the pictures. It can be a really bad situation at 2 times a day and sometimes 3 if they have events. So it's to keep it as it is, not widen it. All the costs associated with widening it to 36 feet are out the door because you're not widening it, you're keeping it the same. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Anyone else? Thank you all for the input. We'll move to item number 5, business presented by the president. All information has been presented for the agenda. We'll go to resolution ordinances action items. Let's go to village administrator performance evaluation information only. Jesse.
Yes, thank you very much. Excuse me. With a couple of open records requests recently submitted, as well as inquiries amongst the village board pertaining to the administrator's performance evaluation and compensation with the village of Grafton. I'm bringing forward an open session informational presentation just to help provide the information that is all subject to public record. So that said, I'd like to take an opportunity to walk through the evaluation process, the results thereof, and just for the information of the board and the folks in attendance. With that, I'd like to start with the evaluation process itself. This all starts back in 2016 by unanimous vote of the village board. An employment contract was approved to finalize my hiring as the village administrator. That employment contract does set forth some basic guidelines with regard to performance evaluation process. In summary, the village administrator receives a performance review in a similar fashion as all other non-represented employees, and any cost of living wage adjustment and or merit wage adjustment is to be calculated in a similar fashion as all other non-represented employees. Those are the generalized terms of the specific language in the employment contract. With that basic foundation of the evaluation process set forth by the employment contract that was unanimously approved by the board, the performance review process for the administrator then defers to the village's adopted employee handbook and compensation policy for some more specific guidance. This is due to the fact that my position as village administrator is classified as a regular, full-time, non-represented employee of the village of Grafton. I am appointed here to work in the village of Grafton. I am not an elected official. Specifically stated in the employee handbook, an employee should be rated by the person they directly report to, since this person should have the best knowledge of the employee's job performance. In the best situation where an employee reports to more than one person, in this particular case, I do report to work for the entire village board as an entity. Therefore, I have in essence 7 supervisors. It may be necessary to have more than one evaluator, which in this case is stands true as well, as each of the trustees and the village president has input into my performance evaluation each year. If this situation arises, the final decision will rest with the department head. In this particular case, the village president fills that role in essence, as the village president has the most day-to-day contact with the village administrator regarding all operational policy decisions, what have you, with regards to the village of Grafton. The employee handbook further sets forth that the quote evaluator, end quote, in the context of performance evaluations is quote normally the employee's immediate supervisor. And as I mentioned, that role is in essence filled by the village president for the fact that the most amount of contact and communication regarding day-to-day matters is between the village president and village administrator. However, this is not formally defined within the employee handbook or any adopted policy language. With no other formally adopted guidance, the performance evaluation process for the village administrator then is facilitated by the village president. This process has varied over the last 8 years. However, the last 2 have been much more consistent in nature and form. From that standpoint, from my standpoint as the village administrator, I'll walk through the 2024 performance evaluation process. The village president sent out copies of the evaluation form, blank evaluation form, via email with fillable PDF forms to all village board members. A specific return date was identified. A copy of that blank form and email message are attached to the IFC. The village board members individually complete their respective forms with scores and comments based upon their own individual assessment of the administrator's job performance.
Each of the forms are returned to the village president for compilation. The compilation of the scores and comments are done with the assistance and oversight of a second trustee chosen by the village president. For this last year, it was trustee Fenton. The previous year, it was trustee Luft. All scores are entered into a table to generate an average score for each performance criteria, which are used to calculate an overall performance score. With the evaluation scoring complete, a summary of the compiled scores and comments was distributed to the village board via email earlier this year. The results of the performance evaluation are also shared with myself as the village administrator by the village president, and in this case for this last year, trustee Fenton as well. Again, previous year, trustee Luft sat in on that sharing of the performance evaluation results. The village president then works directly with the finance department and human resources for the final calculation of any wage adjustments. I am not part of that calculation because the finance department and the HR generalist make sure the calculations are done correctly and they are based upon the completed review scores as submitted. What do those scores mean? So the evaluation form and scoring. So to take that a step further into the process, the evaluation itself includes specific weighted criteria in which the administrator is evaluated. Performance scoring for each of these criteria ranges between 0, not meeting expectations, up to a 2, exceeding expectations. Scores submitted by each of the 7 board members are averaged for each individual criteria, then added together to calculate the overall performance evaluation score. It is important to note that a summary of the compiled scores and comments were in fact distributed by the village president to the village board as previously mentioned. The evaluation scoring and how it applies to any merit calculation is set forth in an attachment to the IFC that was published and posted online. An overall score of 100 would mean that the administrator receives the approved cost of living adjustment or COLA only, no merit. Basically, that's a score of 100 as the scoring is calculated. I'm meeting expectations. I'm not going above and beyond, nor am I falling behind. The COLA approved by the village board for 2025 was 2%. Under the current compensation language, any score higher than 100% is eligible for an additional merit adjustment. Merit adjustments are calculated as a percentage of the COLA. For example, if the village board approves a 2% COLA or cost of living adjustment, the employee receives an evaluation score of 108, which translates to a merit score of 105. That table is attached. So that calculates out to COLA plus merit would be a 2.1% overall adjustment. So that's cost of living plus merit. Because again, merit is a percentage of the COLA that is approved. Or in this particular case, the mathematics behind that, based upon the attached table, is a 105 multiplied by 2%, gives that 2.1 overall. Moving forward into my specific performance evaluation results for 2024, each of the individual evaluation forms completed by the trustees was attached to the IFC, is included with, as well as any other additional information they included with their submittal. Attachment 11 is a summary of the submitted performance evaluation scores applied to the evaluation criteria, and then the calculation of the merit adjustment. Again, this calculation is handled by the Human Resources Generals and the Finance Department. I do not calculate these scores. I am completely hands-off except for the fact that I have the results reported to me. For 2024, as the village administrator, I received an evaluation score of 145.3, which translated into a 2.9% cost of living and merit wage adjustment. The change I noted in the staff report. My salary in 2024 was $125,605. The 2.9% cost of living adjustment and merit wage calculation increase as well brought me to an annual salary for 2025 of $129,247. Now, that is just my salary. For every employee of the village, there is another calculation which would be overall compensation. Salary is only a portion of an employee's overall compensation. Benefits such as health insurance, Wisconsin retirement system pension contributions, life insurance, the employer's share of federal taxes, such as Social Security and Medicare, mileage or automobile reimbursement, and imputed life insurance are also part of the calculated overall compensation package. And to walk through that, on behalf of this informational, presentation, I would defer to, attachment 12 to the IFC. So once again, for 2025, my overall compensation package, gross salary, as I mentioned, was $129,247. Health insurance, which is a standard benefit for all employees. All employees with the Village of Grafton are eligible for our health insurance program. Per state law, the village pays up to 85% of the premium, not to exceed $2,245.48 for family coverage. So the cost to the village, i.e. a benefit to me as an employee, is $26,946. The remainder of the premium is paid out of my earnings. Life insurance, which again is a standard benefit for all employees as they are eligible to take health insurance. There is coverage paid by the village equal to the annual wages of the specific employee. In my particular case, that benefit cost is $213. The Wisconsin retirement system or the pension system. This is a standard benefit for all employees. Per state law, the village pays an equivalent of 6.95% of wages towards the WRS contribution. So that means the village pays $8,983 in 2025 towards that pension benefit. The employee, myself, pays an amount matching the employer's share. Medicare and Social Security tax match. Standard benefit for all employees. Employers are required to pay 6.2% and 1.45% of gross wages for Social Security and Medicare taxes respectively. The employee pays the same amount. I match that amount. That is totals $9,887. The longevity program. This is adopted as part of our employee handbook. This is a standard benefit for all employees, equal to $1.50 per month that an employee is employed with the Village of Grafton. For 2025, my longevity program benefit will be $170. Imputed life insurance. This is a standard benefit for all employees. Life insurance is tax-free benefit in amounts up to $50,000. This is the value of life insurance exceeding $50,000, and therefore the benefit cost is $215. Another standard benefit for all employees is workers' comp insurance. The village pays $235 for that coverage. Coverage provides financial assistance to employees who are injured or become ill while working. One unique benefit that I have, this is in accord with my adopted employee contract, is a automobile allowance of a $3,000 per year automobile allowance. My employment contract sets forth that I use my personal vehicle for village business, and therefore I submit mileage logs to finance. I do not claim the IRS rate. I simply provide the mileage logs as proof that I am in fact using my personal vehicle for village business, and I am provided a $3,000 annual automobile allowance in accord with my employment contract. That is separate and distinct and unique to me. Other employees who claim mileage are reimbursed at the IRS rate, subject to submittal of their mileage logs. So overall, compensation package for the village administrator, this would be for 2025, wages and benefits, is $178,660. That is the overall cost to the village for myself as an employee here in Grafton. That being said, I'm happy to have the opportunity to walk through this information for the village board and the public in attendance, as again, this is all a matter of public record. So any questions asked, I'm happy to answer. This is the world I live in as a local government official, the proverbial fishbowl. It's open record and accessible to anyone at any time per request. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jesse. Board discussion on this. Trustee Harbeck, you brought this up as a closed session item. We're in the session. I'll let you start with that, but everybody can chime in one at a time. I would like to say that we, I think if we're going to be making comments on this, you get one chance to make a comment, and then we'll go right through the rest of the board.
So I appreciate the fact that we're talking about this. To me, this is a closed session item because it's a nice opportunity for the trustees to be able to talk to each other directly about different ideas that they share, different experiences they've had with the administrator that each other may not be aware of. So I appreciate seeing the evaluations of every trustee, which we have not seen in the past ever. The other thing I just wanted to say is that, I know that I speak for some of the members who've been on the board for a few years. This is really the first time that we've seen the compensation package, and your salary. And I don't think that's anything to hide, but for some reason, we've just never gotten it. And we've never, seen it from year to year. So thank you for providing that, Jesse.
Certainly, this is the first time somebody's asked, so I'm happy to provide.
Right, right, and I guess it is unusual to have to ask for that, because I would think that we as a board would see that in our packet, so that's not on you, I don't believe. And so just the other thing I'll say is, I did not see any comments from you, President Delory.
Yep.
And, the other thing is, I did not see any of my positive comments in the comment section or in my constructive criticism.
Thank you. Andy, do you wish to make a comment?
I have no comment.
Amy?
Well, I think the reviews speak for themselves. The majority of the trustees are happy with Jesse's performance. There's a lot I could comment on. I'm just gonna highlight a few things of interest. Under staff development, there was a comment from a trustee that this would normally not be something that we would be aware of. Well, we should be aware of it. How do we give a qualified evaluation if we don't know what Jesse is doing with staff? It's up to the trustees to reach out to the department heads and inquire how things are going with Jesse. That's a standard that I do every time when it's just Jesse's review, either a phone call or I meet with the department heads and I ask questions. For personal development, there was a statement about the ICMA CM certification, that this is the expectation and a requirement for the administrator position. Where does it state it's required? The contract I have says encourages personal development, doesn't say required. Again, when I was preparing for this review for Jesse this year, I reached out to Jesse and I asked him about his personal development so I could have a better understanding of his efforts. Interaction with village board. Again, where does it state that Jesse should be reaching out to us as trustees to set regular meetings? The fact is, it doesn't. I believe it's the trustees' obligation to reach out and to meet with Jesse. We have Jesse's time here at board meetings. If we want more of his time, it's incumbent on us to take the initiative to meet with him if we need more information. It's not his responsibility. Interaction with public. I attend close to 80% or more of community events, and Jesse is normally always present. I believe we are more transparent now as a board than ever before in the history of the Village of Grafton. As administrator of the Village of Grafton, Jesse can take credit for what his subordinates are doing. They are doing it under his direction. As the manager, he's responsible for delegating tasks. I'll just end by saying there are many things that are part of our jobs as trustees. For me personally, part of my job as a trustee, one of my core values is to build people up, not tear them down. Thank you.
Thank you. Jim?
My comments were related to Jesse previously. We have gone into closed session in previous years to discuss his overall job performance, and for some reason that is no longer the case. Just for comparison's sake, like what type of merit raise did he get in 2022? What type of merit raise did he get in 2023? And I did discuss that with him. He informed me that he wasn't aware of us ever going into closed session. Well, that's really not true. We did.
If I may, Mr. Miller, you did ask that question of me.
Yeah.
And you're correct. My initial answer was I did not recall going into closed session, as I've never been part of a closed session.
Yeah.
And then I did look back the following day at the meeting minutes and I found out several years ago, there was in fact closed sessions and prior to that. And you did ask me about that. And I did apologize for misspeaking. So I appreciate the fact that the representation you just made, the statement you just made kind of misrepresented that fact. I owned my misspeaking because I was not ever a part of a closed session in the past. And there was not a closed session in 2024. And so therefore, frankly, I didn't think about it when the question was initially asked, but I did make sure to verify how I answered your question. And I did own up to the fact that I did misspeak the next time we talked about it. So I would appreciate recognition for that.
You did do that. However, you didn't call and tell me that, oh yeah, you're right, we did meet in closed session. That was on me to look up. You never said anything about it. I went back in time to look, to see. Correct? Would you agree with that?
And I went back and verified it as well, and we agreed that I misspoke. I am a human being. I did misspeak. My
Understood.
apologies.
Anything else, Jim?
No.
Rick?
I'm gonna share that I was very disappointed with a couple of the reviews. 5 were very, very similar in Jesse's performance, which in my opinion has been, fantastic. But there were a couple of reviews that were belittling to Jesse. And I don't think that was fair. And really what it shows is a lack of communication on those village board members. And, not reaching out and communicating their concerns and their issues. You have an entire year to talk to Jesse about the issues that are going on and things you're not happy with, but you didn't do it. So that's back on you for not communicating. Jesse, we're very fortunate to have you. You're also very fortunate to have a great supervisor in President Deloret. He respects you and encourages your effort. And I want to stress the word respects. We all witness the mutual respect and the great working relationship the two of you have. And if we're lucky enough, President Deloret will continue in that role for another 2 years. And I thank you for all your hard work.
Okay. Well, as everybody here knows, my evaluation form that I completed for Jesse is attached. And I think I was a little unfair with one of the scores that I gave you, Jesse, and that had to do with us meeting. I can echo Trustee Luff's comments, but I gave you a lower score than I think you deserve for that, only because I think it should have been more on my part to reach out to you. I have the same opportunity you do to call me or for me to call you, and I failed at that part of that evaluation as well. So that was the reason for that low score, and that's on me.
I appreciate the sentiment, Trustee Armstrong. That being said, your evaluation, from my standpoint, I believe was fair. That was your evaluation based upon your individual circumstances and your individual observations. And it was set forth in that manner. I appreciate where you're coming from, but I also understand and I agree with, and I believe it was fair how you scored me. So I appreciate the sentiment, but the evaluation was fair as it was based on your particular circumstances at that time. Thank you.
Thank you, Dave. Just to close this out, I'd like to address a couple of things here. First of all, thank you very much for pointing out that my comments are not part of that. We aren't required to have any comments. You're not required to. You can have a note, you enter in your score, and off you go. I spend a great deal of time trying to make sure that Jesse understands some of the things I hear from the village board, and that he does take those comments and he executes them, and I appreciate that. As far as closed session, first time I heard about closed session was December 31st from Trustee Harbeck, when she did in fact stand in for performance review and said she would like to have a closed session on this. In addition, I did reach out to our labor attorney to see if this is something we can really do, and I also did work with Mr. Herbrand as well. And frankly, you know, if what we want out of closed session is to find out what his compensation is, that's fantastic. That is absolutely great. We can do that in the future, but I didn't hear any requests for that. I just heard we want to go to closed session. For what? That's the important point. If we're going to sit and discuss and bargain and try to get people to change their mind, that's not good human resource management. Each one of you has 1/7 of the appraisal. If you want to rate him as a 0.5 or you want to rate him as a 2, that's up to you. It all averages out. And that's what the greatness of this process is. In addition, I think we have done a great deal of coaching with Jesse to really help him let's not forget, this performance process is not for us. It's not for the Ozaki Press. It's not for News Graphic. It's not for the chief of police. It's not for my wife. It's not for anybody else. It's for Jesse. We have a responsibility to let Jesse know what we think of his performance. And while some of them were low, some of them were high, and it averaged out into a very good performance review. If you're unhappy with the way Jesse performed, then I suggest you have a one-on-one discussion with him several times a year. You have that opportunity, sit with him, tell him what you need to know, what you want to get to him, and then he can then adjust his performance. That's the way performance management goes. I guess the thing that frustrates me is at the end of the year, we can use a really large iron pan to hit you over the head. Or what we can do is we can help you to achieve greatness in your performance, which helps all of us in the village of Grafton. So I want to thank you for your performance, Jesse. I think you did a great job. I also want to thank you for the humility it took to make this a public information. I think public is better than private because everybody needs to know, and we can do that. And again, I will throw this out to the board. If you are looking to change the process of performance review, the time to do that is this year, not at the end of the year. It's time, if you want to change this process, we can always go ahead and change the process if the whole of the village board decides they want to do that. That's something I'll leave to the board. If you want to make that process, please put a rec in or put in an email to me and Jesse, and we can bring that up for future discussion. Thank you very much. Let's go to our next item here, which I believe is going to be Public Works, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay, let's go to report of Public Works. First motion is to recommend the village board approve a contract with TRC Environmental for 2025 groundwater monitoring work as amended by staff not to exceed $50,000 and be approved. I'll need a motion and a second to discuss that.
I'll move to approve.
I'll second.
Motion and second, Jesse.
Absolutely. This is ongoing environmental groundwater monitoring work in the Lime Kiln Park area. There is an underground plume that has been identified in the area, and this is, for lack of a better way to put it, our way of keeping tabs on it to make sure it is not encroaching on anywhere it should not be. It is through the DNR and reported to the DNR rather. It is an ongoing and annual effort, and this is a not to exceed contract to carry out those annual efforts.
Very good, thank you. Any questions at all on this? This is go through Public Works. Okay, seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That motion carries. Number two, I need a motion and a second to recommend village board authorize upgrade to utility septage receiving station at Elamec Incorporated for amount not to exceed $36,885 be approved.
I'll make the motion. I'll second.
Motion and second. Jesse on this one.
Certainly, this is a facility upgrade with regards to receiving station for septage at the plant. It is a contract for not to exceed $36,885. It has come forward as recommended by the Board of Public Works.
Motion and second. Questions on this? Seeing them, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That motion carries. Motion number three, I'll need a motion and a second to recommend to the village board to accept the proposal from Core & Main to purchase 600 5/8-inch meters and 600 single port radios for a cost not to exceed $201,000 be approved.
I'll make the motion.
I'll second.
Motion and second. Jesse, that is pretty straightforward.
Yep, we continue on with our planned water meter replacement program. This is a purchasing of the parts for installation. Our utility has been ongoing with this over the last several years, and I believe we have 1 or 2 more years left. That said, this is a purchase of the parts for installation.
Okay, we have a motion and second. Any questions? Seeing none, hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Will the board be opposed to taking motion 4 and 5, which are terminating the contract with Truck Equipment and purchasing from Universal as one motion? Very good. We'll look for a motion in a second to recommend the village board authorize the termination of the 2024 contract with Truck Equipment. And then we'll look for a motion to recommend the village board authorize the purchase of a custom build for the 2024 5 cubic yard dump truck chassis from Universal Truck Equipment. Incorporated Galesville, Wisconsin, for an amount not to exceed $149,774 be approved.
I'll make the motion.
I'll second.
Motion and second. Any discussion on this? Jesse, I think we pretty much,
The long and short of it is, we couldn't get it when we needed it, and therefore we're looking at a new purchase contract, not to exceed 149,774.
trucks aren't getting any cheaper, are they?
They're not.
They are not. Okay, we have a motion and second. Any questions? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That motion carries. Let's go to, motion to recommend the village board to set up following 2025 fees. North Service Area ICF per acre, $2,050. East Service Acre Area ICF per acre, $3,200. I-43 lift station per acre, $4,554.50 per acre. Bobolink lift station per acre, $1,354.37. 9th Avenue lift station per acre, $1,396.23. I-43 sewer and water crossing, water main per acre, $564.78. I-43 sewer and water crossing, sanitary sewer per acre, $708.01. And finally, equivalent residential connection, ERC fee of $1,217 to be approved. Jesse did most of the work here. So whoever does the motion here doesn't have to repeat it.
I'll move.
I'll second it.
Gotcha, motion and second. Jesse?
Sure, just a quick point of reference here. So these are development related fees, depending on the area in the village in which a development occurs. They may be subject to one or more of these fees with regards to offsetting utility infrastructure improvement costs. In particular, let's take a look at the Bobolink lift station. Something built or developed in that area that would impact flow into that lift station has to pay these fees to help offset improvements to that station and or other infrastructure. These are based on an engineering data index. So that said, the upcoming code reference will look to update the way these fees are set. But for 2025, these are the recommended fees for approval by the Board of Public Works.
All right, we have motion and second on this. Any further discussion? Thank you, Jesse, for clarifying that. Okay, seeing none, all in favor, say aye. Opposed? And that motion carries. Item number 7 here is motion to recommend to the village board to approve ordinance with proposed updates to the village code sections 3.36.04, 3.36.045, and 3.36.05 be approved. Motion and second, please.
I'll make the motion.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Jesse, let's go through this one.
Sure. In short, these are code updates being proposed to address how the aforementioned fees are set. The aforementioned fees, the North Service Area Interceptor Connection Fee, the lift station fees, the I-43 water and sewer crossing, those fees are set through an engineering or construction index. That said, this code update looks to not for 2025, those would be set, but for 2026 and moving forward with, if this code is adopted, would actually set those fees based upon actual costs, construction costs, instead of an index.
If I can.
Did I say that right?
Just a little bit close.
So close.
This ordinance update does reflect the motion ahead that we just updated those fees. It keeps those fees that you just approved to be updated annually based on the ENR engineering cost index. But there were 3 additional fees that we used to see at the same time as these fees. And those would be the 8-inch water main, 8-inch sanitary sewer, and then roadway and sidewalk costs. We actually pulled those out for renewal in 2025, and these ordinance updates show that. Ordinance updates, rather than updating those fees on an annual basis, based on the ENR index, now the ordinances read that if we came into that situation, we would use actual project bid costs and contractor costs rather than an index fee.
Thank you.
Anything else on that? Give a motion and second. Questions on this? Anything down here?
Director Thomas, there was a note that these sections of the village code had not been updated since 1979. Is that correct?
Parts of it had been updated since then. That might have been the original year.
Is there gonna be some sort of process in place going forward so that those get reviewed more often so that not such a big gap in between?
Right, so we review the fees every year. So the fees get updated every year.
It seems like it's a long time since it's been touched.
But we can definitely look at the ordinance more often to make sure it's still valid.
Lisa,
And this is just for new construction, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And, did I also see something in this document about the town, if the town wants to hook in, is that possible, that they have to pay?
So if there's anything in here
Okay.
regarding that.
Okay.
I mean, they would have, like, if we needed to extend water main into the town.
Yes.
For some reason, that would fall now under using actual engineering project costs.
I think it talks here about like a special assessment upon completion of the installation. It's collected prior to or at the time of annexation. So that's just.
Correct.
Annexing.
Yes, that's if they annexed in, then they would owe these fees if they had been.
Yeah.
In rare cases,
Thank you.
excuse me, trustee, in rare cases, I think, in very rare cases, the services have been extended into the town and then it becomes a deferred assessment. And if the town landowner connects and annexes, they pay the assessment.
anything else, Lisa?
No.
Okay, any further questions on this? Just a comment, it really helps us as a village board. If we see red lines in this or changes on this, so if we do get ordinance changes, I would really like to recommend that we, put red lines in, so we clearly understand what we're approving.
Can do.
I appreciate it. Very good, so we have all questions answered, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, that motion carries. Let's go to discussion regarding reconstruction 10th Avenue at a consistent 36 width, adding angled parking adjacent to the property at 1713 10th Avenue, Grafton, Wisconsin, extending this angled parking to the entire length of the 1731 property. Jesse?
Absolutely. Before diving into the request for consideration that was prepared for the village board, I'd like to make a note of several email correspondence that the village received. There was one correspondence from William Haas, who spoke to concerns regarding the proposal for design. There was a recommendation for the board to vote to retain the variable roadway width as is, with possible cost savings related to retaining existing driveway aprons and gutters, and to retain the angled parking for Grove as they requested. There were attachments to that email, including a sketched out roadway width diagram. There was an aerial photo with drawn in angled parking proposal or what it could look like. Actually, there were two of those included as attachments to that email from Mr. William Haas. Over the weekend, the village also received an email from Sue Haas, who provided pictures of the school pickup traffic situation on 10th Avenue. That shows why in her opinion, shows why the recommendation has been made to leave the roadway width at 35 feet and not narrow it to 32. Pictures were taken on February 14th after it had snowed. Also, for comparison's sake, included a couple of pictures from Stonewall Farms, where the roadway width is 32 feet that were taken before it snowed on February 7th. Again, this email correspondence and attached pictures were submitted by Sue Haas over the weekend to the village board. This afternoon, received an email from Superintendent Jeff Nelson. This was in response to an inquiry from Trustee Harbeck. The email response speaks to, so the question asked was Ms. Harbeck forwarded Ms. Haas's email, I'm following the string correctly, with regards to the photos that were provided about the school pickup area. That said, Superintendent Nelson did respond with, he would speak with the Dr. Gunderson at Kennedy Elementary, as well as other members of his team. And that, here we go, this is right from Superintendent Nelson's email. In speaking with Kennedy's principal, we instruct parents to use Maple as the designated lineup for student pickup at the back of Kennedy. While we do not specifically mention 10th Avenue as an option, it appears that some parents use that street for parking and then walk their child or children to their car after dismissal. It appears safety may be an issue if the road is more narrow than currently, but I am not sure what our other street widths are, to be honest. Thanks for seeking our input. With that, I can absolutely speak to the fact that the Grafton School District was not notified of this project because project boundaries do not touch school property. Only adjacent property owners are notified of a road project. And as Superintendent Nelson mentioned, 10th Avenue is not part of their pickup plan. However, photos were submitted, and as Superintendent Nelson pointed out, it is utilized by some parents. With that, I will walk through the IFC as prepared for the village board. The recommendation coming out of the Board of Public Works was to recommend a discussion and review of the reconstructing 10th Avenue up to the village board, and this includes the angled parking as well as the roadway width. So we're going to start with the Board of Public Works. A statement was made by a resident at the beginning of the Board of Public Works meeting last Monday stating that, quote, "The staff, led by the administrator, is responsible for recommending and carrying out the policies and ordinances of the board." That couldn't be more true. Our guidebook, if you will, is in fact that code of ordinances and any other adopted policies the village board brings forth. That said, in 2018, chapter 18.20.070 of the code denotes street widths of the graph was amended to narrow the roadway on Minor Street from 66 feet to 60 feet, and the minor roadway width from a minor street from 66 feet to 60 feet, and the minor roadway width from 36 feet to 32 feet by a unanimous vote of the Board of Public Works at that time. This recommended chapter amendment was subsequently unanimously adopted by the full village board that was seated at that time in 2018. Title 18 of the municipal code was again revised in May of 2022, in which chapter 18.20.070 was renumbered as chapter 18.05.020. However, the specific dimensions did not change. During the course of the project and its review of the design, Grove Inc., 1732 10th Avenue, did request 94 linear feet of angled parking along the west side of the street, 10th Avenue, directly adjacent to their business. This could be allowed in accord with chapter 10.36070, angle parking, section of the Grafton Municipal Code. It's important to note that this could be allowed. It is not currently delineated as angled parking spaces on 10th Avenue, and Grove employees do not currently park at an angle on 10th Avenue as the ordinance allows. Rather, they back into a paved area perpendicular to the roadway. There was an attached photo to the IFC, creating an unsafe travelway due to the fact that the parked vehicles extend out into the roadway and onto the sidewalk. Moving forward, based on chapter 18.05.020, staff budgeted for and designed a 32-foot roadway for 10th and 11th Avenues as part of the 2025 street utility project. It's important to note that, to clarify, that initial request forwarded by Director Thomas to the residents was to actually exceed the 32-foot dimension down to 28 feet due to the small amount of traffic in that area. That response was negative. Therefore, we deferred back to the village code standard of the 32-foot roadway for 10th and 11th Avenues as part of the 2025 street project. Last week, the Board of Public Works, the Board of Public Works by a vote of 3-2 did recommend the village board discuss this reconstruction project at a consistent 36-foot width, adding angled parking adjacent to the property at 1731 10th Avenue, and extending this angled parking the entire length of the 1731 property. That takes us to where we are right now. We did attach notes with regards to chapter 10.36, the angled parking. The entire chapter in the code is incorrect according to the current marked and utilized angled parking locations throughout the village. Staff does recommend revisiting this chapter to match actual conditions. The block of 10th Avenue between Maple Street and 11th Avenue currently varies in width from 33.5 feet face of curb to face of curb, up to 36.6 feet face of curb to face of curb. We did attach a drawing denoting the various measurements taken by multiple staff members to ensure accuracy. Estimated additional let's see here, the estimated additional cost for Board of Public Works requested changes to consider would be set forth as follows. Construction cost for the additional concrete apron, the length of 1731 10th Avenue. Their property, approximately 315 feet, would come at a cost of about estimated at $40,000. The construction cost for an additional 4-foot width of roadway from 32 feet up to 36 feet. Again, our design currently calls for the 32 feet width in accord with village code. To maintain the 36 foot or go up to the 36 feet width, $27,000 plus We Energy pole location and gas line relocation costs. There would be 11 additional tree removals that would be required with the 36-foot roadway width as well. Engineering costs for redesign of the items above would be about $4,500 as estimated. And then a total cost, the Board of Public Works considered changes comes up to about $71,500. And then up to a potential of $100,000 in relocation costs and working with We Energies. So there's a significant financial impact to going above and beyond what is designed for code. The current road design with a 32-foot roadway width and no angled parking allows for 17 parallel parking spaces along the west side of 10th Avenue and an additional 12 parallel parking spaces along the east side of 10th Avenue. It is important to note that the original request from Grove Inc. was for 15 parking spaces. As it's laid out in the design, we would be able to provide up to 17 and another 12, well exceeding the 15 parking spaces initially requested by Grove Inc. Staff's recommendation design, as mentioned, exceeds that request for parking spaces. Parallel parking spaces would also provide a safer travel way as vehicles would not have to back out into traffic from an angled parking spot to leave their individual places where they parked. That being said, the action requested of the village board tonight from staff is based upon the safety, functionality, and budget considerations listed above. Staff does retain their original design recommendation based on chapter 18.05.02 of the Grafton Municipal Code, establishing a 32-foot wide roadway with parallel parking spaces. As mentioned before in my report, staff further recommends a review of chapter 10.36.070 angled parking in the near future to reflect current delineated angled parking areas in the village. And we did have some notes about that attached to the IFC as well. There's a rundown of the matter, where it started and where we are this evening for consideration.
Well, thank you for that long discussion. I'm glad we have it up on the table here to discuss. What I'd like to do at this point in time, as I understand the staff, the motion would be that the staff, we would adapt staff recommendations for review. Is that correct?
Yes, as designed.
Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask for a motion and a second to recommend the staff. Staff retains the original design recommendation. We'll bring it to discussion and we can do an up-down vote on whether the board agrees with that. So look for a motion to retain the original design recommendation based on chapter 18.05.020 of the Grafton Municipal Code, establishing a 32-foot wide roadway with parallel parking spaces, and also recommending a review of chapter 10.36.070 angled parking in the near future. Look for a motion and a second.
I'll make that motion. I'll second it.
We have a motion and a second. Okay, thank you very much for that. Let's go to discussion here. Who'd like to have the first swing at this one?
I will.
Jim?
Well, we have people here that are concerned about what's going on here. Roll, longtime community partner for us. The lady in the third row. Karen Bisbrook. Voicing her concerns. I share those concerns, as well as the safety of the students that are attending Kennedy. I'd like to leave the setup the way it is, the street the way it is, the width the way it is, the angle parking the way it is. You have my support in that regard.
Thank you. Would like to be next.
I'll go. The concern I have is, the cost of the project. And Amber, I don't know that you have the full cost built into there. Because when we talked about this at the meeting on Monday, well, last week, we talked about being ADA compliant, and I don't see any of those numbers in there with having ramps at the intersections. And also in one of the drawings, there were just lines and not including handicap parking along in there, which would lessen the amount of spaces that are shown in that drawing. So I don't know that $100,000 is actually a correct figure, and I'm kind of concerned that may be a little bit low. Now, I want to pay some respect to Grove too for being, a company here in Grafton for a very long time. I'd like to continue to have them here as well and allow them to expand their employees working at that location. But again, it would come at a cost of safety all around too, and accessibility down that street. So I just want to get those comments posted.
Very good. Mary Beth?
I have a tendency to lean towards the ordinance. I noticed when the cars are parked in front of Grove, they're parked across the sidewalk. And, I'm not sure that that's safety, considered, but the real reason this is going on is because we're tearing up, putting in the sewer and other lines. So if we add another 100,000 to the project to add those parking spaces, that's a large cost, and it's already costing more than it wasn't budgeted for. It was more, it's a pretty significant project. I appreciate your concerns, but I would have to side with the ordinance.
Thank you. Who else would like to give? Andy?
Director Thomas, if the roadway is built as existing, it is an inconsistent width throughout that entire area, correct?
Correct.
So for me, the interest in rebuilding the road straight up, obviously it's the failing sewer underneath the road that we need to address. The rebuilding of the road, to me, it should be a consistent road width throughout the area. It is my understanding that from attending the Department of Public Works meeting that night, if the road is made 36 feet wide, all of the street trees on the east side of 10th Avenue. Correct?
Correct.
Okay, and then of course, then we have the issue of we introduced gas lines that have to be replaced or relocated.
Right, in the areas where we would be widening the street, there would be those additional concerns.
Okay, so in the interest of having a uniform roadway, so I look at that and go, there may be a safety concern in the sense of a 32-foot wide roadway throughout the project. But I also look at that as it is a residential street, and it's not traveled as a street of like how a county highway would be. It's not really a throughway per se. So I'm personally comfortable with a 32-foot road width. Now, addressing the Grove of parking, it is also my understanding that if we go to a 32-foot road width, we're going to hold the east edge of 10th Avenue as it is now, correct? We're not moving the road east, correct?
I don't think we have considered that since the design was for 32 feet. Typically, the narrow road would stay centered on where the roadway is now.
So it would narrow on both sides.
Correct.
So if we held the east edge of the road and did the 32-foot width down towards Grove, we could go back to actually creating an actual angled parking area as opposed to their, I'll use the word perpendicular parking that they do when there's obviously not snow. I drove through there today and I saw their parallel park. I think that has to do with how the snow is plowed in that area. So that would be allowance that we would be able to do an angle parking there with like the angle is 15 feet basically is the cutout. And then we would still be able to retain sidewalk in front of their building going in front of the building if we held the east edge of the roadway.
Correct. There's a lot of other things maybe to factor in if we were gonna hold the east side and try and just narrow on the west side to allow for that room. The crosswalk at the north end of 10th Avenue where it crosses Maple lines up with the crosswalk to the school driveway. So if we narrow just on the west side, we would cause ADA cross ramp issues there for the school and the students. And then we'd have to look at a couple of driveways on the north end of 10th Avenue on the west side, widening that parkway significantly on one side can lead to driveway issues.
But as far as the 32-foot width design work, we would be able to, with that type of road width, correct that angle parking problem on the north side of the road, west side of the road, correct?
Correct.
Thank you.
Director Thomas, what happens when the village digs up a road? Are we liable at that point once we dig anything up?
Right, so yes, as soon as we, this road has not been touched in several decades, so there are ADA compliant issues and other things like that. That village is liable for, but we also haven't gone out there and reconstructed it. So it was built to conditions or to regulations when the road was originally built. As soon as we tear the road up and put something new in, then we are definitely held to today's regulations, and we want to make sure that we rebuild that road to match not only today's ordinances, but today's rules for ADA compliance.
Mhm. And then, what about pedestrian ordinance, like for sidewalks and things? I understand that sidewalk doesn't go the entire way.
Correct, right? So now, we're looking at that as a whole picture and connectivity through the village and wanting to ensure that we can extend that sidewalk that goes to nowhere, create safe crosswalks down where 10th and 11th intersect, as well as where 11th intersects with Falls Street, to make sure we get that connectivity.
And, how many residents do you recall received a letter informing them of this?
Yeah, I was just actually counting the properties here as we were sitting. There's 26 properties along 10th and 11th Avenue. So these 6 properties were the one that got the initial request to respond about the roadway width and the trees.
And how many responses did you get back?
7.
7 out of 26.
Correct.
And Grove is requesting 15 parking spots. Your recommendation is to do parallel and 17 because you feel that's a safer choice.
The safest option for parking, yes.
Okay, and you feel that this would be a budgeted item if we stay at the 32 feet?
That is how I estimated the budget. So we do hope that the cost will come in within budget.
Thank you.
Lisa?
So I have, excuse me, a number of concerns. The information that was sent to the residents initially did state that the street was 32 feet wide. And that is not the case from curb to curb. So my concern there was that was not accurate information. I don't know where that came from. There was additional information that talked about possibly downsizing it to 28 feet. And I understand now that you've said that came back up to 32, but the road is varying widths, 36 to 33.5 in different areas. So that was a concern to me, that it was presented as 32 feet and it was not 32 feet at all right now. The other thing is that the chapter and the ordinance that's being used is the ordinance for new construction in new subdivisions. That is what people are referencing. And this is not a new subdivision. This is not new construction. And And actually, in that ordinance, it does talk about the widths of the street and things, there are other things that should be considered when the rule is 32 feet. A couple of examples. One reason to consider possibly not 32 feet is to lessen congestion in the streets, encourage the most appropriate use of land, taking into consideration the character of the village, to preserve the distinct character of neighborhoods, commercial districts, and the community as a whole. The definition of a minor street is that it's intended to be used primarily for access to abutting properties. The residents all spoke of safety concerns. That is their concern. There were some concerns about the fact that the street does need to be reconstructed for some water issues, I believe, in some of the driveways. So yes, that is the reason. They are concerned, everything they talked about was about the school. The parents who park on the street, the kids who are in the street, they are concerned about, and we did see some pictures about that. So they are concerned about that as well. You can't really get 4 cars safely completely across the road. My other concern was that really was not the exact motion that I made at Public Works. The motion I made was to keep it the same as the road is now, which would of course mean it's varying widths. And the second part of my motion was that we would allow Grove to keep what they have. They are asking us to honor the ordinance that they asked about years ago. And that's the ordinance that they're going on with the other 2 angled parking areas in the village. I think there are 3 total that have special circumstances. They are asking for that. I think that that's something that we should consider. They've been a partner of ours for almost 100 years. I think that combined with the fact that the residents are worried about the safety of the kids, the street will now be narrowed by, in some areas, 4 feet. And I think we need to listen. And I do understand that this project went out for engineering and it abutted right up against the meeting. And so there was really no time. I think we should think about changing the process of these engineering plans. And there needs to be time for citizen feedback, for people to feel like they're being listened to. I know you talked about there'll be a March meeting and they will be able to come look at the plans, but at that point it's too late. There's nothing that we can do. So I would ask that we reconsider. It doesn't look like that's going to happen. I think it's important to our residents, and I think it's important to a longstanding company that we honor the ordinance that we have on the book, and that the next time we want to reference something, we use a more exact ordinance, not something for brand new subdivisions.
Thank you, Lisa. Okay, so I'll wrap up the comments here, and I think that we get mixed up when we start talking to neighbors, and I think it's great that we talk to neighbors and we offer people the opportunity for input. I don't like the comments, everything and everybody, because I think that sometimes overstates our point of view. First of all, as trustees, we establish policy. The policy in question here is, should we support our own ordinances? And I think many of the folks here brought up ordinances. Our ordinance clearly states minor streets shall be designed to reasonably conform to the topography, to discourage use by through traffic, to permit efficient storm and sanitary sewage systems, and to require the minimum street area necessary to provide safe and convenient access to abutting property. Minor street locations and street gates shall be established whenever practical in such a manner to avoid excessive grading and avoid the excessive removal of tree growth and general leveling of the topography. We have numerous concerns brought to us regarding 18.05. It is a board. We have no interest in addressing that ordinance. We've run into this time after time after time, some people being victims to narrowed streets. The ordinance is our guiding template. We don't follow the ordinance have a challenge to all ordinances and road width. How can the staff enforce these ordinances and how can they design a road when we're constantly moving the goalposts? Voting against an ordinance that has been in place on a case by case basis is not consistent policy design nor good policy administration. Diagonal parking. Okay, I love Grove. I think you guys do a great job. But, you know, honestly, I took a look at Apple Maps today, try to figure out from a view of the top, how we park. And honestly, I see that we're not doing diagonal parking, we're doing horizontal parking. Where a lot of times, and this is on Apple Maps, the cars are pulled all the way onto the sidewalk because there's not enough depth there. I don't agree with, as much as I want to say that I want to help out Grove with this, you can't park on the sidewalk. And 90-degree parking isn't diagonal parking. The ordinance allows diagonal parking, it doesn't ordain the right to diagonal parking or 90-degree park or parking on the sidewalk. I'm gonna address the cost issue. We're an associates did the design here, correct? I think the world of Ramesh. I've known Ramesh for many years, longer than you've been born. I know him, he's a great guy. And the quotes for an additional $171,000 for this project are concerned for me. What are we gonna go without to pay for this? $171,000 is the cost of an additional police officer, or perhaps even an acre of parkland. Given the concerns from some of the residents, should we consider passing on the cost of this wider road or of the diagonal parking to those individuals in a special assessment? These are things that need to be discussed at Public Works. Green cost. What's the cost of the letting trees cut down? Are we willing to absorb that loss of resources? Lastly, let's talk a little bit about school traffic concerns. 10th Avenue does not abut school property. Every school area, including private schools in the village, have issues with parking and traffic for about 30 minutes twice a day. I know we have that problem up at Whitfield. I see that, we've heard that before the board at St. Paul's. We hear it at St. Joe's, we hear it at Kennedy. Every one of them has problems with parking because parents like to bring their kids to school now and pick them up. They're busy. Narrower streets do slow traffic and provide safety for our least protected residents, not just kids, but kids, handicapped, and senior folks. It's interesting to note that 3 out of the 4 engineers present at Public Works meeting supported staff recommendations. Professional opinions in traffic flows should be left in the hands of competent licensed professionals. All of these issues need to be addressed before I vote against the staff recommendation.
And we out of order. So.
I'm sorry, sir.
This isn't gonna cost.
Sir,
And penny,
sir,
sir, she made the motion to go to 36,
Sir,
a bunch of
please,
bullshit.
no.
There would have been any extra
Sir,
money.
I'm gonna
whatsoever from
ask
the
you to
initial bid
remove-
for it.
Thank you.
Good partner.
Thank you. So at this point in time, I will look for, we have a motion and a second for this. I will look for a vote.
Can I have you restate the motion?
Sure.
President?
I have that right here, President Delory.
Please go ahead, Jeff.
For my notes, I have a motion by trustee Schwartz, second by trustee Armstrong to retain the original design based on chapter 8, the specific ordinance of within chapter 8 of a 32-foot wide road width with parallel parking and a review and direct staff to review chapter 10.
Is that clear? Thank you. Good. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Nay. I see you raise the hands. Aye. Nay. That motion carries. Next on our agenda. Community survey. Jesse?
So we have a recommendation from the Finance and Personnel Committee to approve and distribute the community survey with recommendations and changes. However, this recommendation is a bit open-ended, and I would like to walk through some of those recommendations coming from the Finance and Personnel Committee for further discussion here at the board level. One of the concerns raised at the Finance Personnel Committee was the overall length of the survey. So that said, the attached draft is redlined showing where particular items that either were were too nebulous or not necessarily responded to in the past have been omitted. Just a quick walkthrough of that. Question 2, please rate the importance of the following factors provided by the village that contribute to the quality of life in our community. Assistance to and support for community events. That really either was left blank in the past or frankly a bit nebulous for folks to grab onto to be able to respond to. Further consolidation of items under public safety, consolidating fire protection and emergency medical services into one line. Omitting question 5, should the village consider consolidation or expanded service sharing in the following specific areas? This was not really well responded to in the past, or it is actually just almost an automatic function of staff to review the possibility for cost efficiencies or performance efficiencies and bring those forward as they present themselves. That said, if the village board has any direction, we follow up on that as well. So that question was omitted. Very much shortened the question that follows. In your opinion, should the village consider altering current services or amenities? We shortened that from a multiple choice to simply read, in your opinion, should the village consider expanding its online service offerings to allow residents to interact and conduct transactions online? Under what would now be question 6 on page 3, at the various informational resources, consolidated the various social media types into one answer instead of individually listing. Instead of individually listing the newspapers, we just simply listed it as the local newspaper. So therefore, consolidating down the survey a bit further. Then, due to the fact that there was very little response to question 9 on our last survey, just omitting that question altogether. But then just also throughout the entire survey, helping provide examples or explanations as to such things as library services. What does that mean? Available materials for checkout or programming options. Clarifying what the citizen request hub is. That is just simply an online service request vehicle. That is my draft prepared based upon the feedback received at the finance committee level. It is now before the village board to finalize the refinement of this survey. One last item that was discussed, and it was agreed at the finance committee to keep the table in question 4, which directly compares Grafton with its nearby Ozaukee County communities with regards to tax rate, water rate, and sanitary sewer rates. Whether or not that table should be included, or if we should just simply list the question and really leave it to the residents to focus on, as a standalone tax bill or utility bill, do you feel it's fair? Do you feel you're getting your values worth? The thought process at finance and personnel was to leave in that comparison table as it just provided context, but there was a little bit of back and forth as to whether or not we should keep it there. Hence, this draft presented to the board does in fact leave that table there. These are not final numbers. They would be revised with the outgoing survey. Hence, they're listed in red. That is the update from the committee.
Jesse, would you like us to come up with a discussion here before we go to a motion?
Yes, I'd like some guidance, because I guess at the end of the day, we still have some time here. So if we have some discussion here this evening amongst the board, and there are some significant changes or updates the board would like to see, I would take that direction. I would ask the board table the matter, and I can bring it back much more cleaned up at our next meeting, assuming there would be changes here this evening. So yes, I would recommend not making a motion at this point.
Very good. Why don't we do this? Why don't we go ahead? I have no comments on this. If you wish to table this, to make a recommendation on things you wish to table, just please note that, and we'll take that in consideration when we come to a motion. So I have no concerns with this. I'll start with Dave.
I don't have any concerns.
Mary Pat?
I don't have any concerns, and I do like the table. I think it's nice to see what other communities are paying or what their rates are as compared to Grafton. So I would recommend keeping the table.
Okay. Joe?
I don't have any changes to be made other than. How do we get to, Jesse, how can we get more people to participate in this sort of thing? Is it out there for people? Oh, I'm gonna do that.
Absolutely. We try to incentivize it through offering chamber checks as well as pool passes. We make it available online and paper copies. I have done in-person visits to senior resident facilities as well as the senior club. So that said, working hard to make this available as much as possible out there to the public in various forms that we can tabulate. But at the end of the day, even with those incentivized prizes, if you will, and the in-person visits, we do retain a small sample size of the community. It's important information, but it is admittedly a small sample size.
Anything else, Jim? No. Okay, Amy?
Jesse, under number 3C for senior center, I would just like I'd like to see you add, general customer service, because they do have people walking in from the street asking questions.
That's it? Andy,
No changes or edits at all.
you're good? We're good. Lisa?
I agree with Mary Kat about the table. I think that to see what other communities are paying, really helps you, I think, appreciate what we're paying. And I like that we decided to put Grafton on the top instead of in the middle, instead of alphabetical. I think we
Call it out, yeah.
Sorry. And then the other thing I was gonna ask about, the very last item that we crossed off, the educational opportunities. Did we ever have that on the survey in the past?
We had it, yes, the 2022 survey, our last time we did a community survey, we had that question on there, and it was a resounding flop with regards to a response. It was either an out no or very, very few respondents to anything specific. And as if I recall correctly, I would have to look back to verify this. There was, I'm going to say less than 5 folks fill in the blank of what they might want to see. There was very, very little response. Most of it was outright no, not interested.
I do like the streamlined version here, so.
Very good. So it doesn't sound like we want to table this. Sounds like we probably want to move forward with this. So I'll look for a motion in a second.
I make a motion, we approve it.
Second.
We have motioned in 2 seconds, which makes it a third. With that said, any further discussion? All right, motion in second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Jesse, you do have your marching orders.
I do. Thank you very much.
And with that said, let's roll into village administrator report.
Right, as I unearth the rest of my packet here. Actually want to start my administrator's report with a quick update. Director Thomas is working vehemently to have the light post replaced at Cheyenne and Highway 60. As we know, it was taken down by a motor vehicle. That light post did have a traffic signal attached to it, which provided for a left-hand turn arrow to go south on Cheyenne. Thankfully, there's very little left-handed traffic going southbound. So right now it's manageable. Not ideal situation, but manageable. That said, we've received word from We Energies as well as several other vendors as we investigate the attempt to obtain a replacement pole. The unique factor here is that light post has a traffic signal attached to it. Current We Energies standards do not allow for that. However, We Energies has acquiesced and said, yep, you can reestablish that light post with the traffic signal on it. And that is what we're trying to do, is get the replacement pole that is structurally sound enough to be able to replicate that arrangement. That said, we are not able, either through We Energies or any of their sub vendors, to get a specific ETA as to when a replacement pole will be available. So therefore, Director Thomas, to her credit, has taken it a step further and has asked We Energies, can we place a temporary pole there that is properly engineered, wind loaded, what have you, structurally sound to be able to have reestablish the traffic signal in that area, but on a temporary basis until we get the decorative light pole in stock. We Energies is willing to consider that, and we are gathering data to get to We Energies to do that. So we are actively working on the replacement of that signal, but unfortunately, we do not have a specific ETA on it. We're just very happy at this point that We Energies is willing to consider our temporary solution. So it's something that we're working on. That is one quick operational update. That said, wanted to use the remainder of my administrator's report to simply review. We've had some pretty vigorous conversations here over the last week, and just take a moment to review the elected officials handbook and some of the guiding principles and practices that we have adopted here in the village dating back to May of 2023 to help ensure effective village operations. This elected officials handbook also serves as a reference guide of sorts by defining terms such as special revenue funds or outlining general fiscal or operational information related to the village of Grafton. This helpful handbook does in fact speak to there may be differences of opinions. And with the vigorous discussion that primarily has surrounded the 10th Avenue design project, but also other items that have come forward to the board over time, just want to take a moment to take a look specifically at Chapter 7 of this handbook that we have in place. Chapter 7 denotes that village staff is an integral part of the team that serves the elected officials and committee members as well. Village staff are professionals in their field and subject matter experts who are tasked with providing information and recommendations to help guide the decision-making process. On some occasions, board members and or even the public may disagree with staff's assessment or recommendation. This is perfectly acceptable. I think that needs to be abundantly clear. A difference of opinion is perfectly acceptable. Staff is bringing forward based upon our education, our professional experiences, our design standard knowledge, what our thought and opinion for a recommendation would be. You don't have to agree, that's okay. So long as these differences are handled in a professional, constructive, and courteous manner by all parties, staff included. Although certain topics may ignite conflict and draw negative feedback, little is accomplished when there is a lack of courtesy for others. In the event an individual's personal opinion differs from a recommendation presented by staff, providing constructive feedback and politely explaining one's views are paramount to a productive meeting. Little is accomplished and feelings may be hurt when decorum is lost. Attacks on individuals, whether fellow board members, staff, or the general public, are never appropriate and should not be tolerated by the board. And I ask staff that they not tolerate it as well. We are human beings. We are professionals. We are here to serve in a professional manner to the best of our abilities to continue to improve this village. If an individual does or says something wrong, it is okay to address it in a polite manner. This includes addressing concerns about staff's work product during meetings. Something to consider would be that if an error is minor or non-substantive to the decision-making process, the appropriate time and place to address concern would not necessarily be during that public meeting. A follow-up conversation would be perfectly appropriate. We as staff are here to work with the board and the public to provide assistance to the best of our abilities, but we are in fact human too. And I fessed up to that earlier this evening. When I fessed up, I misspoke to Mr. Miller. When he asked a question, I misspoke. I did research and I actually confirmed his research as well. I owned that and I apologize for the fact that I misspoke. We are all human here. I appreciate the opportunity to use my time this evening to simply ask for everyone's consideration of this information as we continue to collectively work towards keeping Grafton a great place to live, work, and play. Thank you all.
Thank you, Jesse. Let's move on to operator's license. Take a motion in a second to approve the operator's license as presented.
I'll move to approve.
Second.
Motion and second. Any questions? Thank you, Chief. Appreciate your hard work. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? That motion carries. Onto the village expenditures of $593,419.36. I'll look for a motion in a second, bring it to the table for discussion.
Motion approved.
I'll second it.
Motion and second. I did see one question come forward, and that was asked and answered. Anything else? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Opposed? And that motion carries. I'll look for a motion to adjourn.
I'll make the motion to adjourn.
Second.
Motion and second, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
And that is approved. We are adjourned and thank you all for your time and attendance.